Andrew Hanlon over at Pimpin' Ain't Easy had an interesting article asking, are the Chicago Bulls going to be forced to decide between Ayo Dosunmu and Coby White? Not because of the money, more so because of the play style. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to take a look at the game tonight or this afternoon against the Atlanta Hawks and what the Chicago Bulls need to do to win this game. Plus, dive into the mailbag. All that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And I want to start talking about this article here from Andrew Hanlon over at Pimpin' Ain't Easy. Pretty solid article, right? Not that I necessarily agree with all of it, but I do think it's an interesting start piece for a conversation, right? The point of this article is that he asked is that if moving on from Coby White would unleash Ayo Dosunmu even further for the Chicago Bulls, right? He goes on to say this. White is a more skilled offensive player. Regardless of what the percentages say, he's a better shooter, a more advanced ball handler, and a more versatile playmaker. His trade value is higher than his backcourt mate, and he would likely yield Chicago a more significant return. Holding on to White and trading Dosunmu is arguably the better move, right? So there you go there, right? Now, then he goes on to point out the reasons why the Bulls would be better off with Ayo Dosunmu, right? He talked about putting Ayo in a more prominent role. He then talked about how Ayo's production off the bench this year, and it is very promising, right? Overall, I think when you look at this right now, the combination of Coby White and Ayo Dosunmu, I think those guys have chemistry. They can play together, right? And the thing is, I know a lot of people make something about Ayo coming off the bench for the Bulls, and me and the person I co-host Locked On NBA Game Night with Swiper, he talks a lot about like really Ayo getting that opportunity to start, and I understand that, right? You have to ask yourself this. I think even taking away who you feel like is a better fit for the Chicago Bulls, right? Is it worth paying? If you're already paying Josh Giddey 25. Let's say you pay Coby, I'm going to say 27 and 28. I don't think he's going to get the $30 million. The Bulls may give it to him just to not let him walk away if they're deciding to keep him. But let's say the 30, right? So that's $55 million for your starting backcourt. Are you going to add in another potential 16 to 18, 20 million for Ayo Dosunmu when you're already paying Trey Jones another $8 million? That's a lot of money. You're getting close to $80 million, right? In just backcourt in that's place. Probably closer to 70, 75 in just your backcourt. And that's a question that I think, as much as I've talked about, like the Bulls have the money to keep both, and they do. I want to be clear here. That's a lot to pay for a team that right now is looking like they're going to be in the play-in again at best, right? Until now, if they start playing better. And that's the thing in this, right? If the Bulls actually came into the season winning, it would have made this decision a lot easier to keep all the guys, right? But with the Bulls struggling now, and the Bulls needing to make a decision, not waiting until the offseason so they don't lose anybody for anything, needing to make a decision by February 5th, which is the trade deadline, it does put you in an interesting scenario. Ayo's clearly the better two-way player, right? And there you go there. We've seen Coby and what he can be as a scorer, and despite people blaming the Chicago Bulls struggles on Coby White, which the Bulls are 7-9 without Coby White, 5-6 without him, which means they're about the same either way, right? In fairness. Dosunmu's having an amazing season. 15 points per game, 2.6 rebounds, 3.1 assists. He's shooting 52% from the field, 47% from three, and 84% from the free throw line, which then people are saying or have the right for a question of, should we be trying to unlock Ayo a little bit more? Because that's what Ayo's doing in a reserve role coming off the bench. And keep in mind, some of those numbers have taken a hit because of his injury in times where he's playing and stuff like that, right? Ayo's still a really good passer when he's attacking and off slashing. He does that pretty well. And it is a legitimate question. I have my own thoughts on it, but this is a legitimate question that the Bulls are going to have to ask themselves unless they're fine paying everyone. We have seen in the NBA, teams will pay everyone and then look to move them later. The Bulls basically did something similar with Lonzo Ball this last offseason, right? Even though they should have took the trade that they got offered for him because that offered a first-round pick that became Cedric Howard. Nonetheless, on that, but we've seen teams lock in everybody, right? The Warriors did it similarly with Jonathan Kuminga. Unfortunately, he was a restricted free agent. These guys are unrestricted free agents, but we've seen teams lock in their players and then try to move them later, whether it's a year later, whether it's immediately in that next trade deadline. We've seen teams do that. That way you're garnering and you're making sure you're getting the best value and bang for your buck rather than having to force and teams knowing, hey, they don't have much leeway here. But I don't think with Coby and Ayo, and I know my boy Winton Mahorn's going to say, they're not going to want to stay here with the Bulls keep losing. They're part of the losing. I really highly doubt they're looking at it just like that. But, it's a question. And if teams come calling as well, we'll see. And so overall, I'll say this, right? If the Bulls are going to truly become the team that they say that they want to become, do they have to value fit over relationships? And the question is do you see Ayo Dosunmu as a better long-term fit next to a player like Josh Giddey than Coby White? And I don't know how they feel in that. And again, and the money plays a part too. Do you want to pay upwards of $75 million for a complete backcourt rotation? That's 4 players in your backcourt, a point guard, a shooting guard, a backup point, and a backup, wing, and Ayo who can play the 2 and the 3. Do you really want to lock in that much money on that? And so I think it's a fair question to ask, and it's something to watch and monitor as the season goes on for the Chicago Bulls. And, and again, I love the conversation piece of it that it presents, because it makes you have to think about not just the fit, the money, and the flexibility that it gives you all over the place. And I also think one thing that could have made this a little bit more of a clearer decision for the Bulls also was if Matas Buzelis took a step this year. Now, again, I didn't expect it this year, right? And that's part of it. But if Matas did make that leap where he's scoring 16 to 18 points per game himself consistently, then maybe you do look at it and say, hey, maybe we don't need the upside of Coby scoring as much, and we can balance between the 20 points of Josh Giddey, the 16 to 17 Ayo could average as a starter, and then the 18 that Matas is averaging. But again, that's the woulda, coulda, shoulda. We're not there, so we can't really answer that question because we're not anywhere close to that being a reality yet. And that's just what the Bulls have to look at and they have to answer for themselves. So I want to hear from you guys on this one. Do you think that the Bulls are gonna have to be forced to decide between Ayo and Coby? Again, the money isn't the issue. So if your thought process, they can't afford to keep both, let's eliminate that. Don't even make that part of your response. They can afford to keep both. The question is that should they spend that money though, or should they allocate it towards other things? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. The Bulls do have a game today. They're facing off against the Atlanta Hawks for the first of 2 games in Atlanta, and we'll see what happens with that one. Both Coby White and Ayo Dosunmu have both been downgraded as far as their injuries. Coby White is listed as probable, and Ayo Dosunmu is listed as questionable. And so we'll see what happens with those 2 guys. We know that they have both been dealing with their own injuries over the course of the season. But I love the way that these guys have been playing, right? Especially when you look at over the last couple of games, both those guys have been key and important to the Chicago Bulls' ability to, play back at that with that energy that they've been playing with, right? But the Atlanta Hawks are coming into this game 15-14 on the season. They're right outside the top half of the league, both offensively and defensively. They sit with the 17th best offensive rating in the game of basketball and the 16th best defensive rating in the game of basketball. Overall, net rating at 17th in the NBA at negative 0.6. They are 9th in true shooting percentage, 2nd in assist percentage, which is really amazing considering Trae Young has been out the majority of this season so far, right? They're 18th in turnovers, 5th in steals, 15th in blocks. This is a team that a lot of their strengths are going to be things that the Bulls have had trouble with over the course of the season. But the Atlanta Hawks have had trouble in their last 10 games. They're 4-6 in their last 10. Their offensive rating dropped to 20th over the last 10 games, and defensive rating at 18th, which is only 2 spots lower. The true shooting percentage has maintained, though. They're still 7th in true shooting percentage they're 17th in true shooting percentage, so that has dropped quite considerably over the last 10 games. And their assist percentage is 4th still. Their steal percentage is still 8th. So this is a team that still is active. Even though the wins haven't been there, they still have been more active than not. And that's where things start troubling in the Chicago Bulls. Now, this is the Bulls have to come into this game really prepared to execute and play a sound game of basketball. If they don't do that, they will fall behind the 8 ball. And that's just the reality of it. They will fall behind the 8 ball if they don't do that. So, everything that the Atlanta Hawks have been doing, led by Jalen Johnson, who's leading them in points, rebounds, and assists. He's averaging a near triple-double on the season with 23 points, 10.5 rebounds, and 8.2 assists on the year. Of course, Dyson Daniels averaging over 2 steals per game yet again. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, that player that they acquired in the offseason that people looked at as, of course, a 3-and-D player, has seen a huge uptick in what he's doing offensively for this team. He only averaged 9.4 points per game last year with Minnesota, averaging over 20 points per game this season for Atlanta. 45% shooting from the field, 38% shooting from three, and 86% from the free throw line. So the Atlanta Hawks spread it out. They have Jalen Johnson averaging over 20, Nickeil Alexander averaging 20, Trae Young averaging 16 when he does play. He is going to be playing today. In his first game back, he only, I think, scored 8 points. And then you got a Congo as well, averaging 15 points per game. So this is a team that does it by committee. And those are the type of teams that the Chicago Bulls have had trouble with. Now, Kristaps is out in this game. Trae Young is still not himself right yet. And we know that we got the Trae Young stopper in Ayo Dosunmu. Trey Jones can also do some pretty good job against Trae Young. He's probably going to come off the bench in this game. So the Bulls have to focus on that. Keep the energy up. Watch out for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The question then becomes about, can Coby White and Josh Giddey still be effective? Because they're going to be able to throw the right defenders at them. Dyson Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, those guys are going to be on those players for the majority of the game. That's going to mean that other players are going to have to step up, whether it's Vooch, Modest, Okoro, Ayo coming off the bench, Jalen Smith, those type of guys. They're going to need to be other players because they're going to try to disrupt Coby White and Josh Giddey. The Atlanta Hawks are going to implore a similar system to what the Miami Heat did in the play-in last year against the Chicago Bulls in this game. Defensively, that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to rough it up. They're going to try to stop them from getting to the paint. They're going to stop them from driving. They're going to try to force the Bulls to be a perimeter shooting team. And we got to see if the Bulls are going to do that consistently in this game. Let's hope that they can. If they do, we'll see if the Bulls can get a dub today because, hey, 3 wins in a row sounds pretty damn good if the Bulls can do it. It's a big if, but let's see if they can do it. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the mailbag portion of today's episode. This first voicemail, this one's from Doug.
Hey, Haize, this is Doug. The Bulls are back. We're on a winning streak. We're playing good, defensively, offensively. I got faith in them. They're going to keep it up the rest of the season. If they do, how aggressive will the Bulls be at the trade deadline? I think they should make only one trade, and I know you'll agree with me because it's for Trey Murphy III. According to Google, the Pelicans want 2 first-round picks, a young player with star potential, and another player for salary matching for Trey Murphy III. The Bulls have all of that. As long as you keep your 2026 first-round pick, because that draft is so deep and the Bulls can't really miss, give up 2 first-round picks. The Bulls aren't very good at drafting, so they're not worth as much to the Bulls as it would be to other teams. The young player with star potential that I would give up is Noah Sengay. As long as they took Patrick Williams as the player to match the salary. I know a lot of people quit listening as soon as I said Noah Sengay, but hear me out. Getting rid of Patrick Williams' salary is definitely a plus. He's going to end up before the end of the season being benched, making $18 million. The question for Noah Sengay isn't whether he has potential to be a star player, because obviously he does. That's why we drafted him and why the Pelicans would want him. The question for him would be, is he going to be a better player than what Trey Murphy is going to be? I think the Bulls should take that chance. If they do, at the end of the season, since you still kept all your players with expiring contracts, you still have all your money to spend. You re-sign Coby White, re-sign Ayo Dosunmu, re-sign Zach Collins and Kevin Huerter to more team-friendly deals. And for the love of God, please go out and get Walker Kessler so we have a legit center. That would give the Bulls next season a starting 5 of Josh Giddey, Coby White, Trey Murphy III, Monas Buzelis, and Walker Kessler. Off the bench, we would have Trey Jones, Ayo Dosunmu, Kevin Huerter, Isaac Okoro, Jalen Smith, Zach Collins, and a 2026 first-round pick. That's a legit 12-man rotation. And you could finish filling the bench up with guys like Lachlan Albert, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, in case you have injuries and stuff like that for them to fill in. But I think that's more than just a playoff team. I think that's a contending team as long as they keep playing with the same energy that they've played with the last 2 games and like they played at the beginning of the season. But I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this. Keep up the good work. God bless.
All right, I'm not really ready to say yet that the Bulls are back. I'm just not, after 2 games, I'm not ready to say that. They are showing signs that they could be back to where they were at the start of the season, but I'm not willing to say that yet. They have to actually do it more consistently. And listen, we saw for basically 7 games, and it still didn't hold true for the majority of it. So we got to see the Bulls. I would say we got to see this Bulls team play this consistent until at least mid-January. And that doesn't mean they have to win every game, but they have to play with this style, this effort until at least mid-January before I'm fully ready to believe it again. That's just me personally. Now, no knock on you, right? But for your question, how aggressive will the Bulls be? I think it not only depends on if they're winning or not, but it also depends on how AK evaluates these players and who he feels he wants to bring back, right? In that, I'll say I'm going to tell you this. There is zero chance that AK gives up Noah Essengate. There's absolutely zero chance that AK, this isn't me saying whether they should or not, but this is me saying that AK, there is zero chance he gives up Noah Essengate before he has 3-4 years of really evaluating him. So that's just not going to happen. Secondly, P. Will's contract does suck, but it isn't limiting the Bulls to the point yet where you need to basically give up 3 first-round picks, the 2 and Noah Essengate to move him. Now, to get a talented player like Trey Murphy, I love Trey Murphy. I love the concept of him on this team. I love how you thought about moving a contract that's not expiring to get him as well as picks to then try to add him to this team, and then we still have our expirings. If you're able to convince them to take P. Will back and 2 first-round picks, you do that every day of the week because at that point, like you said, Trey's basically taking over Patrick Williams' contract spot. He makes $5 million more, but he's basically taking over that contract spot. And then you'll still have, because P. Will is already going to be on the contract, you still have tons of cap space to re-sign your guys and go after Walker Kessler. That would be such a stroke of geniusness if AK finds a way to get Trey Murphy in here and still get Walker Kessler or Nick Claxton or whoever in the offseason. It would be genius to be able to do that. I don't know if he's definitely not going to do that if Noah Essengate is the vehicle to get there. Again, this is not me saying if he should or not. It's just me saying I've watched AK for this long. He's not going to give up on a player that he was that high on that he just drafted before really him seeing what he can be at the NBA level. So it's just not going to happen. I love Trey Murphy. Love the concept of him being on this team, but it's just not going to happen that way. All right, let's get into this next voicemail, man. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Bergen calling after the second Cleveland win. And while I'm glad for the dub, once again, I'm not really excited until they win like 7 of their last 10. That's how bad of a run they've had. Where even the dubs are like, okay, that's nice. But right now, when you spoke on how P. Will has probably played himself out of the lineup, and I 100% agree with you. That was my feeling at the start of the season because I didn't see where he was going to get minutes. When guys were down and they put the ball in his hand or they gave him opportunities, you didn't see him cut to the basket. You didn't see him, really throwing elbows and fighting good rebounds. He was past the piece, for lack of a better word, for most of the last 10 games. And even though Poro is somewhat inconsistent offensively, he's going to give you effort. That's the one thing I can't knock. He's going to get steals, going to hit the occasional 3. The first game against Cleveland, when he came back, he was 6 or 7. So he's a guy who can, put up decent numbers for him. Which unfortunately, he will. It's just disappointing. But, when you talk about making moves, if I'm the Bulls, I'm willing to take back, additional salary in order to get off P. Will. People talk about his rolling. I'm really hoping they go after someone like Trey Murphy. But I'd also be interested in going after Dejounte Murray. Yes, he's hurt. Yes, this would be a rehab year for him. But if they told me, hey, we'll give you Steve, Missy, and Dejounte Murray for P. Will, Booch, and a first-round pick, I'd probably do it. And I know the money wouldn't be right, but probably have to add throwing another contract on the Pelicans' part. That'd be a good deal to me. simply because Bush doesn't want to be here. He's motivated the last 2 games, but I don't think that's going to last. Yeah. He will never be what he used to be. So, what's your opinion? Thanks.
Billy Donovan laid it out in training camp. Minutes were going to be hard to come by for P. Will. It was going to be based off how he's playing. He said that about Jalen too and some other players, Julian and Dalen, right? He put P. Will in that grouping of players. And I think now we're starting to see, now that everybody's back healthy, who that rotation is going to be. You can't play everybody, and that's just the reality of it, right? And P. Will got an opportunity when key players like Coby and Collins were out and there was a void of minutes. And for what it's worth, in his role, he played pretty well in. He played pretty well in that role. A little bit inconsistent at times, but he played pretty well in that role. Now, the question becomes about, are teams looking around the NBA and seeing P. Will and saying, damn, hey, listen, I feel like I can work with that. Is there some coach in the NBA that's going to feel like they can work with that? And we'll see, right? I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but we'll see. And I don't think, again, P. Will's contract isn't hurting the Bulls to this point where they need to take on bad money just to get off of him. Not yet. Could get to that point in the offseason, depending on who they want to sign and how much they want, where you then trade off Coby, maybe even give up picks to move off of him so then you could sign a Walker Kessler or whatever. But we'll see if that's going to end up happening. But I just, again, P. Will fell out the rotation. It is what it is. As far as Yves Missi from the Pelicans, I love the concept of getting him. I don't know if they're really looking to move him personally. I just don't know that. And I don't want to take on DeJounte Murray, who's been out of basketball for almost a year, just to get Yves Missi either. So I get the concepts of what you're getting at. I just don't think that they're realistic for what the Bulls are going to want to do personally. That's just my thought, but I guess we'll see. All right, let's get into this last voicemail, man. This one, we got 2 more. Let's get into this next voicemail, man. This one's from Deanna.
What's going on, Haize? Deanna here. I want to talk a little bit about Keldon Johnson from the Spurs and why I think the Bulls should actually trade for him. So, field goal percentage is right at 56.8. 3-point percentage is 34.8. He's right at 7 rebounds per game and 13 points per game. However, I think he has a much higher ceiling than that. He has an aggressive style of play that I really like. He can drive the ball. He can play with his back towards the basket. He can play on the post. He can pretty much score from anywhere on the court, right? And he's pretty good defensively. But it's that rebounding, oh my gosh, like he's a monster. For him to be 6'6" and a 4, oh yeah. That will be a good move for the Bulls. And even with his contract being 17.5, I think, that could be an opportunity for us to get off Patrick Williams. And I would even give them, if they want Isaac Okoro, I would give them Isaac Okoro. You know why? Because, he's good defensively, but that's it. He's not a threat offensively. He's not a threat in the rebounding department, and I don't think his ceiling is as high as Keldon's is. So I would be willing, I would be happy if we made that trade. I think it would definitely be a win for us. But anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
Listen, Keldon Johnson is a monster. At what he does for his role at being a 6'5" forward, 6'5", 220 pounds, 12.6 rebounds, 12.6 points, 6.4 rebounds, shooting 57% from the field and 35% from 3, which is pretty damn good considering where he is. Like you said, if we can move Isaac Okoro for Keldon Johnson, I do that every day of the week. But I don't think where the Spurs are, and the fact that the Spurs do look like a team that could make some noise in the Western Conference playoffs, as things stand right now, I don't think they're looking to move off a player like Keldon Johnson. I would love him on this team. I just don't think that they're going to be willing to move off him. But Keldon is a dog, like you said. I love Keldon Johnson's game. I love the way he plays basketball. I just don't necessarily see the Bulls doing that at this point. But hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I just don't see him being available. All right, let's get into the last voicemail for today. This one is from Immortal Beast.
What's good, Haize, the Immortal Beast. I just finished watching the game between the Bulls and the Pelicans. So, honestly, as far as my thoughts goes, there's a lot that you can say about this team right now when it comes to simply just lack of energy at times, low effort, and just soft when it comes to dealing with physicality. But right now, to me, the 2 biggest issues that is causing this Bulls team to struggle to win games right now consistently, to me, is Billy Donovan's situational coaching, and the other is Nikola Vucevic's big, soft ass every time he's on the court. Now, honestly, I don't really pay that much attention to the analytics or the stats, all that shit. But right now, based on the eye test, Vucevic is actually just hurting this team. And Billy Donovan saw that. And even though he made an adjustment to bench Vucevic for almost the entire second half in the game against the Charlotte Hornets that resulted in a win for us, you decided to do the opposite in this game against the Pelicans, where Vucevic was literally just getting cooked all night to the point where he literally looked like the softest man on the court last night. And Billy Donovan still decided to keep Zach Collins on the bench along with Jalen Smith and kept Vucevic in the game in the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. To me, right now, the best option, besides the obvious of trying to find a way to get Vucevic off the team, is to bench him. He can't be in the starting lineup anymore. Right now, that is my opinion. But to me, the biggest issue for this team is Billy Donovan's situational coaching and Nikola Vucevic. It's one thing to call this team when it comes to their effort. It's another when the guy who's calling out the team is literally the starting man in the court while everybody else is bringing the energy and effort. So those are my thoughts, Haize. Just tell me what you think. Peace out, babe.
So this was clearly left before the Bulls' last two wins. But Vooch, for the most part of the season, has been a net negative for the Bulls. Now, he's played much better the last two games. Much better the last two games. And I think you're seeing that Billy Donovan is basically rewarding Vooch and saying, all right, bet, if you're playing well, I'll play you. But if not, I have no problem sitting you for Zach Collins and Jalen Smith. And that's what we want to see, at least in the last two games. But like you said, we saw it earlier points of the season, and then Billy Donovan regressed back. So I don't know how that's going to work out, overall. But as it stands right now, over the last two games, what the Bulls have won, it seems like Billy is fine saying, all right, let's wait and see how Vooch is playing. And then depending on that, we can bring in Zach. We can bring in Jalen. We can bring in both of them, move Modest to the three. And it really just depends on how Vooch is playing in that game. And I think matchups are a big part of that as well. Today's going to be a big test of that. I think against the Atlanta Hawks as well, just kind of bring it all back to today's game. I think today's going to be a big major test in how they feel with that. Because with Okongwu and Mohamed Goye, like those are two guys, and Asanu who can play a little center for them. They could get into Vooch a little bit, and we'll see how Vooch battles that. But I do think, at least on paper right now, I see Zach Collins and Jalen Smith being the better front court to play against those guys, and move Modest to the three in certain stretches where he can guard Risha Shea, than playing Vooch. But hey, Vooch has surprised us before and played pretty well against centers that I didn't think he was going to match up well against. So we'll see if that's an opportunity again for the Bulls today. But that's my time for today, y'all. You guys can follow us hold on. That's not the way to close the show. That's going to do it for today's episode. If you rock with today's conversation, man, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. Drop your thoughts on the comment down below. Coby, Ayo Dosunmu, who you rolling with. But also tune in for the game today. We'll be live for the post-game shows, pre-game shows, and during the game, so stay tuned for that. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.